Hi there, and thank you for clicking on the video. This is going to be a quick little PSA. I mean, quick for me. I've been seeing in Clan and Alliance chats where people, it's probably due to like it not being explained well enough, but people aren't taking Plague Star as seriously as it needs to be. In terms of like you enjoying Warframe, right? Like obviously it's a game, don't take it too serious. But it's just people. I saw a couple people where they didn't even know Plague Star was happening. So this is going to be a quick little PSA. Um, Plague Star, the main purpose for it is basically for MR and Forma. You can get Zaw Arcanes, which are super useful. Especially if you like your Exodia Contagion builds, if you want to do big damage with Wisp and Clips, that sort of thing. But you also have the Plague parts, which is for MR. That's going to help you, gain, what is it, 6,000 MR? So that'll help a little bit. Frankly, they've been power crept. Obviously, we're in the Incarnon era. But the fact is the Zaws, the Plague Zaws, are still very strong because it's innate viral. So if you're running full strip builds, they definitely have a place, especially with heavy attacks. But the main reason behind it is still bread and butter Forma, right? With this event, you can get completed Forma. So no foundry issues. You don't have to build any of these. There's no time gain on it. You go and you get standing. And you get Forma. It's going to be a little shop that you get it from. You just turn it in. But why is this so important? I was seeing a couple people where they were like, oh, like I only need like a couple. Listen, you're free to play, and I'm going to be frank. You need a lot. I'm probably going to take it light this year and do like 200. Okay? And that's not even some of the more insane amounts that I've seen people do. Like, I've seen people do, like, 600-700, where they, like, no-lifed it. So, why is the Forma such a big deal? Why shouldn't you stop at, like, 20, 30, 40? One, they don't bring this event around very often. It's been a couple years. But two, the biggest time gate, you see these videos where it's, like, the longest frame to farm and whatever. Listen, the longest time gate in Warframe, where it's actually gating you from getting something that actually benefits you directly, is the Tenet and Kuva grind for MR. There's a couple of weapons. I think it's like 33, 32. Each of them require 5 Forma. If you're free to play, that's a half year, give or take. Okay, a little less. So, if you want to max out your MR on these, and you should, you can farm all of that Forma during Plague Star and just skip waiting. It can literally save you 6 months, 7 months worth of Forma foundry time. So it's a massive accelerator. Okay? I think it's like 150, maybe 160 if you just want to do whatever element, do each weapon one time. Obviously, most people have like one weapon that they really enjoy, so they'll farm up like 2, maybe 3. Like, I've got a couple Archiplasmors, a couple of Brahmas, that sort of thing, a couple of new cores. But each of those require 5 Forma to get the most out of them. Now, once you do the 5 Forma one time, you can stop at a lower amount the second time, but in order to get the maximum amount of MR, you need 5. At least one time on each. So, with this event, you can save 6 months of building time, give or take. Like 5 and change, right? But if you're like a completionist or whatever, and you want to farm up all of the Kuva and Tenet weapons in each element at 60%. That is a ton of work, but I know a couple people that have done it. The fact is that that's going to require like 1,200 Forma, right? So it's an insane amount of time to wait if you're free to play, even though you should be selling if you're trying to do that sort of thing. But let's go over a couple of the basics on the farm, the things you'll need, what weapons you're looking for. Because frankly, one of the things I can't remember, when you go to the foundry, if you've done this before, but once the event pops, you're going to go to the foundry, you're going to type in boil, B-O-I-L, and it's going to bring up the 2 gear items that you need. Okay? You're going to build them 5 at a time. I've got 352 of the infested catalyst. I need to go get iridite, but I've got 189 of the Eidolon Phylaxis. I will be running whatever ends up being the most efficient. This isn't about... It's about getting as much Forma as possible. Once you get the requirements of the Plague Zaws and the Arcanes, everything else you spend time doing is going to be about getting as much Forma as possible. This is a heavy, heavy grind. This is in the realm of like accelerating your account, as say like Orphix Venom was, or Scarlet Spear, right? Like it's a direct like those were direct arcane farms. They directly saved you time in doing a shit ton of Eidolons. I was able to skip a ton of the Eidolon grind because I do not enjoy doing Eidolons. This will massively accelerate your account growth. Okay. So here's some of the basics. The infested catalyst is a bunch of common stuff. Plastids, nanospores, ferrite, minor amounts. Plastids, it literally lists where it is. You check those and you find the survival with the resource bonus. Go to a relay, get a resource blessing, and you run like hardcore farm teams. And you can farm up a shit ton of this. Nanospores is infested salvage. Ferrite is another cheap resource. Just pick a survival with a resource bonus. Get your resource booster blessing, or your resource blessing from the relay. And then same thing. Find a survival with a resource bonus. Go farm it. You're looking for something with the highest spawn rate possible. If you have Steel Path builds, do Steel Path. So very basic. The Eidolon Phylaxis. These are drops from the Plains of Eidolon. 1 second. You have Iridite, which is the little 3-pronged breakable pillars. They're very tiny. You can pick up a bunch of them closer to the beginning of the Plains of Eidolon, like near the entrance. Nisselpods are the little tiny plants that are on the ground. Yellow sort of eye to them. These are scattered in the more open areas toward the back. And Grok Drool is a drop from the canisters. You've probably picked up a ton of this. So you're just going to make a loop around the entire thing. And there's no real super quick path because this stuff is so everywhere. You can literally go through and farm like the entirety of the Plains of Eidolon. Just go to each camp. And the fastest method of doing it is actually sort of I guess was made popular by Doth. For Deimos resources, grab an Itzel, bunch of range, strength, and efficiency, and you're going to go around and you're going to spam Cosmic Rush. You're going to double tap it. Click, click. First one's going to break the plants or the canisters. Second one's going to suck everything in. You don't need anything else. And you just go around, you take a frame with a ton of loot radar, literally as much as you want, because the faster you're moving, the more alert that you're going to need that something's there. So you, in the open areas where there might be like a random plant, the further away you can see, the more effectively you can farm it. You can just go from loot radar point to loot radar point, and you can just spam away. and you'll also pick up like loot drop points and whatnot, so you can get your energy back. Like little canisters that are around, and I think there's like a capture a scene or something from a crate. But they'll drop energy orbs, health orbs, that sort of thing. So as you go through and you just sort of face tank everything, you can do it on Steel Path, but that's just kind of whatever, right? Like, it's up to you. So Hyperion Thrusters pays a dividend. Primorphic Transformer helps break the plants. Sometimes the regular one won't do it, especially at like the further range. System Reroute for efficiency, and the rest of it is just range. And Energy Max, so you can spam more. And it's a generic shield build, right? Shield capacity, shield recharge, and strength to recharge delay, right? So you can just go through and boom, 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 just collect everything. So this is one of those things where it's better once you figure out where you're comfortable going through. The items are cheap. Let's be honest, the items are cheap. And as you're doing Plague Star, truth be told, you can probably farm these resources, the Eidolon Phylaxis, as you're doing Plague Star, but I would really recommend you get maybe like 50, 60, 70 of these piled up, because once you get into a team and you get into a rhythm, you really don't want to break that. Because if you get like a really optimized team, you can shrink the Plague Star farm time down tremendously, especially like when you have like a Titania, a Loki, max range Nidus, and like a Mesa was what we were using last time. You can shrink the times down a huge amount. And I'm honestly kind of waiting to see exactly how everything's going to play out now that Steel Path is around. But it's going to be very, very tuned, akin to like farming Endo from the arena. Like, there's going to be a set meta where specific power points you need to hit. Like, you need a grouping ability. And no Core's Cage isn't going to work. It's not fast enough. I mean, it will work, but it's not fast enough. You need stuff to snap together. So, like, Novas work to accelerate the enemies, because you're going to have 3 separate areas in the final stage where the Hemocyte comes out. There's going to be sort of 3 little areas where everything spawns at, generally. And you need to kill as many of them as possible, as fast as possible. And for the Hemocyte, it's pretty simple. A little bit of base damage, a ton of crit chance, and even more multi-shot, right? The gold standard was Titanium. Piranha Prime was also an option. I don't even have the old build anymore. But things like Galvanized Shot, I'm having trouble finding if the Hemocyte is status immune. It's going to be the first thing I check on the first run. And in order to get it going, like, I will probably either run, I'll be on Titania or Nidus myself, or maybe even Loki. But it's a shit ton of corrosive or radiation, depending on if you're full stripping. And you need as much multi-shot as humanly possible. Like, if you look at the Piranha Prime, you've got the 27 multi-shot. This is what you're trying to deal with. It's like dealing with the boss on Deimos, right? Multi-shot's the goal, because it's damage capped. So this is the sort of build-up that you're trying to do. I'm interested to see if they do anything different to deal with, like, Incarnon weapons. But generally, Incarnon weapons don't have a shit ton of multi-shot. So it's probably a pretty good tank against them. I mean, maybe the Soma would be relevant. With, like, a super high fire rate build. Like, double fire rate and then acceleration on the frame level fire rate. But it's literally going to get down to kill times. I'm assuming I'm going to have to tweak my build personally a little bit for the steel path difference, because it was originally just run corrosive, shit ton of fire rate, and you just burn it down in the passive, right? The unique trait is generally how it would work, but it's going to be interesting. I'm sure there will be plenty of one-shot builds available once it gets once everything gets going. I'm going to be looking to build a couple myself, but coming up with a weapon that has like a base shot of multi-shot of 1 or like 2 or 3, you need to think like 10 or 20 in order to burn this down as fast as possible. So a lot of rifles aren't going to work. A lot of pistols aren't going to work. Even some of the Incarnons aren't going to work. Anything that sort of homes, like like the boar. I would use the boar for a bit when I was leveling up Piranha, so I could use that instead the last Plague Star. But like the boar Incarnon, it's probably going to be one of those things where it's like using shotguns for the Incarnon weapons. It's going to be like find a shotgun with that's an Incarnon and don't use the Incarnon mode, sort of thing, you know what I mean? So it's gonna be interesting. But the Hemocyte is weak to Corrosive Blast, so maybe Blast would be relevant, right? Especially with some of the weapons now that we do have the Incarnons. But just keep this in mind. You're looking for multi-shot and to get as much raw damage as possible. You're trying to burn it down as quickly as possible so you can get it over with. But grouping abilities, AoE mob clearing is at a massive premium. Accelerating the enemies, movement speed wise, is at a premium. And it's one of those things where it's like, it depends on which way you want to make it work. But generally, if you can kill the enemies where they stand, so like a Wisp Mesa with like a Loki and a Nova is going to do incredibly well. Loki, you switch teleport. There's this little drone, if you've done the Plains of Eidolon bounty, pardon me, where you have to defend the drone. It's kind of like that. You switch teleport it as you're going along, massively increase it. You piggyback it with, say, like a Nova. And between the two of you, with a max range Loki and a Nova, you can zip that guy across the plains. So this has a meta. If you're thinking like, oh, your Incarnon is going to be like god tier, if it's a shotgun and it's got a shit ton of multi-shot, it might be. But stay away from beams. Honestly, stuff like the Brahma probably isn't going to help you unless you're on trash clearing duty. These big AoE weapons, because the name of the game in order to speed this up is grouping and single target damage with punch through. And you're probably going to have something dedicated purely to trash clearing. So if you're on trash clearing duty, like you got a Mesa or something like that, well, then you don't have to worry about it. You just need something to speed the enemies up and so they take more damage. So it's just kind of how it is. But yeah, make sure you have the resources. Do whatever level you can. If you can do Steel Path, spend today, tomorrow morning, or before you go in, get a group together. This is significantly faster. Holy shit, is this faster if you have 4 competent people. This is way faster, especially when you're doing pubs. There is nothing more embarrassing than 4 Lokis showing up and everybody trying to teleport the fucking drone, and then you not being able to do the mission fast enough. Like I did that one time, and I'll never do it again. So going with a group, playing with a group is at a massive premium. Everybody specializes. Adjust your builds. It is, in order to speed it up, it is actually worth it, in my opinion, to Forma, even if you are gonna unforma it, like undo the Forma. If your role is grouping and your Nidus, it is worth it to Forma your Nidus 1 or 2 times, and then once the event's over, undo the Forma and change it back to whatever it is, just to be able to, you know, speed everything up. I think I actually still have my max range Nidus. Yeah, it was this build. This is actually the build. That's kind of wild. Triple Umbra, max range 280. There's not a lot behind this. But we were running with a Proteum. Literally, I would just stand on top of dispensary and spam this with 280 range to just vacuum everything in as fast as possible so you can get the boil out. And then the other thing, and it's going to be kind of interesting because one of the things that slows you down is the Hemocyte walking out of the boil. And guess who sped that up? He just got a rework. Hydroid was the gimmick to yank the Hemocyte out of the fucking boil so you could kill it as fast as possible. So, for the love of God, make sure you don't slow that fucker down, right? Those Novas need to be running as little strength as possible, and make sure you don't pair up with somebody that BMs and runs like power donation on another frame. Like, the Nova's the only one running power donation in order to get that speed as fast as possible. And it was also something that we tried where it was with Equinox also, running double speed. As soon as it comes out, boom, you both zap it, and it sped the hell up. So, this was just a straight up spam build. Would sit there, you know, group, cast one, group, cast one. So it's literally 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Just grouping shit as fast as possible and nuking enemies as fast as possible. So, besides the boil itself, okay, besides the big boil and the Hemocyte walking out, you've done these missions before. Okay? Like, they're sort of reconfigured. Like, the most painful one where people tend to, like, every person will take, like, a role, and you will literally have somebody whose entire job is to speed up the, defend the drone, because the drone has to go a long fucking distance. Okay? The drone, I remember, it was, like, hundreds of meters. Okay? So taking, like, a max range switch teleport Loki or a Nova speeds the mission up. So my recommended group to start out with is you take a Mesa with dispensary, like a switch teleport Loki, a Nidus can be really useful. You take up something that can speed up the Hemocyte and the enemies, so like a Nova. So you would take switch teleport Loki, a Nova, or a Speedva, sorry. And then you would take like a Mesa, and then like a Titania would be like a really solid setup for Plague Star. And everybody and the Mesa's on trash clearing duty. The Nidus and the Mesa stand on top of the dispenser. And other than that, it's just trying to kill enemies as fast as possible. It's full horde shooter mode with a slight boss interaction. So it is kind of what it is. But make sure to get some resource farming. The time savings in the foundry, because for whatever reason, now that this game's as old as it is, I think the Forma time could be cut down to like 12 or 6 hours, and it wouldn't matter. But they still want this to be as long as it is, and you straight up get to skip it. And this is part of the reason why, like some of the older players, for you new guys that are like MR10, MR11, you're just going to do the best that you can. I'm going to be running this a lot. I will be grabbing groups. But just understand that, like, everybody needs a role, right? So that's just kind of how it's going to be. And the person killing the Hemocyte should be Titanium. Or somebody with a shotgun with probably a pretty good Riven with a shit ton of multi-shot on it and a lot of fire rate. Like I had some luck doing with the Boar Prime, the Comb Prime, or not the Comb Prime, the Comb, and obviously Titania's pistols did really, really good at this. So, and it's even worth forming your build slightly to get the correct build and then unform it later, because you want a couple hundred Forma by the time you finish this. Like 200 is where I'm gonna consider taking my foot off the brakes, if you will. And you should be able to do 10, 12 Forma a day and not kill yourself, but it's going to be one of those things where you have to put like an hour or two into it. So there's a ton of time to no life this. If you know you're in that situation, you can get a shit ton of Forma, or you can get like a reasonable amount. But the amount that you're looking for, in my opinion, is at least 150 to cover the Kuva and Tenet weapons, because that is a massive time savings in order to get that MR. And it just 200 is good for me, but I'm on the other side of that farm. But like 200 Forma would allow you a ton of flexibility to get a couple of builds together, Forma up some weapons, especially now that we have stuff that's so fucking expensive, like catalyzing shields, the Archon mods, Prime mods. This is going to allow you to get those builds together faster. So anyway, PSA over. Take it easy, guys. Have a blessed day.